let's roll on into our week 4 breakdown. Jalen, you could start us off because the first game of the weekend was the LA Wildcats at the New York Guardians, where the Guardians took this one by the final score of 17-14 there in MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, it was a actually, to be honest, for looking at the stats wise, it looks like it's a bad game. And all in all, it was a pretty exciting game from start to finish. It was a close game. Ended up coming down to just a field goal. And then the LA Wildcats ended up having a chance to tie it up with the field goal, and that got pushed away, and that didn't go too good. So they missed that one and couldn't tie the game up. And then they were driving late, but couldn't get to score that final points to get back in the game. The running game for LA was pretty terrible. They had 40 yards on 13 attempts rushing. Obviously, you could say, well, they only had 13 attempts, but honestly, they usually have more than 40 yards in 13 attempts. That's just it's kind of sad. Just a little bit. Leading rusher was Dejon Harris, 5 attempts, 25 yards, the long rush of 15, which means after one run, he only had about 10 yards after that. So pretty sad. Obviously, there was some runs for loss, and their running back who exploded on DC defenders was out this week. I cannot think of his name for sure right now. They just called him Mister Excitement. He was doing flips all the time.
Yeah, that's his name. Last name Excitement.
Yeah, but he definitely would have probably added a little bit more impact to this game. I think could have actually helped LA pull this one off with actually helping with actually having a rushing game that might have helped out just a little bit. But yeah, there's just no balance in the offense. 13 rush attempts, 40 pass attempts. Josh Johnson did have a good game other than his one blemish on it, which was a one interception. He went 25 for 40, so throwing for 63%. 325 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and that one interception I talked about earlier.
If it wasn't for the interception, that would be a pretty rock solid game. This is still a
Yeah.
good game. No, by any means, Josh Johnson has definitely seen some major improvement compared to the first 2 weeks of the season.
Oh, he was actually not. He didn't play the first week of the season. Second
Exactly.
week of the season.
Thank you.
And he threw for around 275, 300. So he's doing pretty good.
He might be the top 3 quarterback in the league.
He's definitely a top 3 quarterback in the league. It's just
especially with Cardale Jones' recent performance.
Yeah, it's the offense is just not complete, and when you only have to worry about him passing, those are pretty good numbers for a guy. If teams know all they have to do is worry about the pass game,
exactly.
Those are pretty good numbers. But as we talked about earlier, the third down completion percentage was absolutely terrible. They were 2 for 12. That is 17% for anybody who does not want to do the math. It was quite terrible. But on the opposite side of the field,
2 for 12 is so bad.
That is
so for most terrible. People, if you're at 40% third down conversion, that's not terrible. 50% to 60% is ideal. 17% is
not ideal in any sense of any game at all. But on the opposite side of the ball, New York might have found their quarterback in Luis Perez. He went 18 for 26 for 69%. Nice. But he only threw for 150 yards, which I think is something they're going to have to work on. But honestly, going against the LA team who struggled with the rush, it wasn't really a surprise. They actually, New York almost threw the game away because they did start going away from their pass game. From their rush game and started passing a lot more. And that kind of allowed LA to stay in the game longer than they probably should have.
They almost pulled a Kyle Shanahan.
Almost pulled a Kyle Shanahan the way nobody else can pull a Kyle Shanahan. But he did have 150 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. So a decent game. There's always room to improve, but decent game overall.
It's all about staying clean and out of turnovers.
Exactly.
As we can see from a couple other games, turnovers is what kills you.
Yeah, losing the turnover percentage is usually it means you're going to lose the game, especially when the competition is kind of as close as it is right now in the XFL. And one of the XFL defenders actually said that they were bending, not breaking, which is kind of how the defense played pretty much the entire game. They were outgained 345 yards to 250 yards total throughout the entire game. But they made third down stops when needed, as was seen by the 2 and 12 third down conversion
Obviously,
rating.
they had solid third down defense. They had them well scouted.
Honestly, I think it was more. I would give the defense credit. The defense was actually really good, but I would say that the play calling wasn't the best on third down. It looked like on third down they were kind of either going for something that didn't develop, or they were just going for too much, uh, or just too little. They just,
Hmm.
oh, it's third down, let's run the dive. Like everyone doesn't see that coming. It's like
Right.
you run dive and you have a jumbo formation out there. What do you think people were going to think you were going to do? So it's just play calling's coming into hand. But I like it that the games are kind of, like I said, evening out, getting closer to the middle. Actually, this will be the halfway mark this week uh, for the XFL, and I feel
Yep.
like teams are starting to even out. The teams who were doing really good are either still doing really good or now they're crapping the bit. Like I said, the Houston Roughnecks are pretty much the only team that hasn't looked like absolute trash at some point this season.
Hmm.
So good for them on that point. But every other team at least has shown some bit of, okay, the XFL does need some work. But at
Of
the same
course.
time,
Well, there's a
it's
bunch of
just
2
beautiful to
2
see.
teams, and obviously there's competition. It might not be high quality competition, but most games are very competitive, and they do come down to a play or two, which
Yeah.
is just more excitement. Going to the next game, the Sunday or the Saturday night game, where the Seattle Dragons at the St. Louis Battlehawks. The Battlehawks took this game 23-16, another one-score game. Of course, in the XFL, you also have to remember that a 9-point game is a one-score game.
Yeah.
But Jalen, the argument I'm going to make, especially after the last 2 weeks, I will say that St. Louis is the hardest place to play on the road in the XFL currently, with how well the fans sell at the lower bowl and how loud they get and how hard it is for offensive function. Surprisingly,
Hmm.
I that is the worst place to play on the road.
I feel
And
like also, isn't it the old Ram Stadium that they're using?
yep, the dome,
Yeah, I feel like having that dome,
the
I feel like
dome.
that just it's a slight advantage. I wouldn't say it's just a
Yeah.
100% like if
Like
you play in
how
a dome, you're gonna
how
win.
the CenturyLink field that Seattle plays that has those awnings that help echo stuff down.
Yeah,
But I
I
think the
think
dome helps, but I think that venue and I want to give a lot of credit to those fans because
no,
those St.
definitely
Louis
the fans.
fans have been starved from football. Of course, we talked about the awful Rams owner to take him away. And it's really nice to see the XFL capitalize on placing a team in St. Louis, knowing that they have this rabid fan base.
Yeah,
And
no,
obviously,
definitely. I
these
was definitely
fans
looking forward to getting a team back in St. Louis.
Oh yeah, these fans are doing the job, and all credit to them. But to get on to the actual game, Jordan Tealmu with another solid performance. As I said, he won Player of the Week honors from the XFL, 20 for 27. That is almost a 75% completion percentage, and that is awesome to have. 264 yards, one touchdown, no interceptions. Didn't do a lot of touchdowns. Let's see, each team only had 2 touchdowns. It came down to the field goals as St. Louis was able to net 3 field goals, while the Dragons were only able to net a couple. But where Talma really took this game over was on his legs. He was the leading rusher for this team, 16 attempts, 63 yards. Most of them came off of scrambles, but some of them were designed runs for him. One of the things I mentioned for the Dragons, something they have to worry about, is their turnstile at the quarterback position. They had both quarterbacks take snaps, and they even had some other snaps by a wide receiver. Took a couple. So
That's
they have a lot of people throwing the rock. Um, but what's not good is that their leader was a new starter BJ Daniels, who's been the backup. 5 for 10, 50, so that's only 50%, 100 yards, one touchdown, one interception. That is almost the definition of below average. And that's really just not good. That's not going to get it done. And then you look the other way. Your former starter, Brandon Silvers, is supposed to lead this team to victory. It hasn't done that. Still hasn't done that. 4 for 10, 27 yards, no touchdown, no interceptions.
yeah,
Two
that's
awful performances at the quarterback position. And that is what is going to not only stop you from winning games, but that is going to lose you games as well.
yeah, no, that's definitely not the way to go. You're not winning in that situation. So
No, not at all. Another problem, a theme in the XFL is that a lot of teams are not good on third down right now, and that
not
is
at
a little
all.
surprising to me. The Dragons only went 3 for 10 on third down, but what really kept them in this game is that they were perfect in the red zone and goal to go situations. So when they had the chance to score, they did score, and that's why they had. That's why this was a close game. But another reason that this was a close game is because the Battlehawks did not do as well as the Dragons in the red zone and in the goal to go situations. The Battlehawks should have had more points in this game. They only went 1 for 3 in the red zone, and you can't expect moving forward. You have to do better than that. You have to be above 50% in the red zone at least if you really want to win these games. This game
Agreed.
should not have been this close.
Not even close. You could obviously see in the game the kind of, I wouldn't say skill difference, but I would say team play difference. You can obviously see that the Battlehawks are obviously a better team than the what am I, Vipers? We're talking about Vipers,
No,
right?
no, talking about the Dragons, buddy. Get with
Dragons,
it.
Dragons. I keep getting them mixed up just because the green.
The
It's the
green.
green.
They're both reptiles. Well, is a
Y-
dragon a reptile? Who knows? It's not real.
Technically, we can never decide because it's not real.
Dragons aren't real, just like the hopes and dreams of those Seattle fans.
Yes, but the Dragons, but you could definitely see that they're a better team than the Dragons. The Dragons are just kind of all over the place. I think the only kind of position where you could point out and be like, that is a good group is their running backs. The running backs are absolutely amazing. But other than their running backs and their rushing game, they don't really have anything. Their defense is subpar. Their passing game is subpar. Coaching subpar. Special teams subpar. Like so it's definitely a team that's in progress,
To say the least. Yes.
to say the least. Yes.
I think that so the next game was the first one on Sunday, and I'm just going to say this: this Texas throwdown, the Houston Roughnecks at the Dallas Renegades, this biggest rivalry game in XFL history, was the most exciting game I'd say up to date in the XFL. It was really good back and forth, a lot of drama, and a lot of good football plays. With the Houston Roughnecks one pulling this out 27-20 to take over control of the state of Texas and to stay at the top of the rankings in the Western Division. One thing I alluded to, Jalen, earlier was this, and also last week as well, when we talked about defenders and Wildcats, the turnover ratio.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to lose you games. The demise for the Dallas Renegades was the turnovers. 4 interceptions. Landry accounted for 3 of those. And 1 interception was near the end of the game in goal line territory. And that clinched it for Houston.
Which was a
And
beautiful
oh,
interception,
it's
by
a
the way.
great interception. You guys should go look. It was tipped, and then the Houston defender went and like one-handed it, like maybe a couple inches above the grass. Amazing.
He's the
Great play.
Palomalu of the XFL.
Without the hair, of course.
Without the hair and without jumping in the
Great
snap.
defense by the Houston Roughnecks, though. The Dallas offense, one thing I was looking at, they were able to rack up yards. They had around 300 total yards. On the first drive of the game, they drove down the field. They're just cranking out first downs, but no points to show for it. And that's because of the turnovers. These turnovers were absolute drive killers, momentum killers, and eventually game killers. And most of these were courtesy of Landry Jones. 25 for 38, 205 yards, 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. Like I said a lot of times, I'll say it again. You can't do that.
Ouch.
You just cannot do that. But of course, we had on the other side of the football field, we had MVP Jay Walker with another solid performance, and he puts himself even further in that MVP race. He completed 25-41, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, the lone interception, which did put the game in the little worry. He's better than Josh Johnson. Shut your mouth. But PJ Walker is still easily the leading candidate in the MVP race. But one thing that differed on the offensive side of the football for Houston is last couple of weeks we've seen Cam Phillips. Cam Phillips he's gotten 3 touchdowns in over the last 2 weeks in each game. So 6 touchdowns. He's won Player of the Week honors twice. He's ridiculous. But this game was different. Cam Phillips, 3 targets, 1 catch, 9 yards. So
definitely
obviously
not the same production he's had over the last couple weeks.
Not the same production. Walker didn't throw it to him as much, but also the Renegades probably played a lot more defense in covering Cam Phillips. But in trying to cover Cam Phillips, that opened up a new guy to get
the
open.
new Patriots right receiver.
That's exactly what I was saying. Nick Hawley had a career game, 8 catches on 8 targets, 97 yards, 1 big touchdown. And of course, he is a white wide receiver. So we all know he is on Bill Belichick's radar for next year.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's definitely one of the weapons that Tom Brady is looking for to stay with the Patriots.
Not a
Oh,
top
I don't know
prospect
if
though, because he's not a lacrosse player.
speaking of the Patriots and Tom Brady, did you see the video that was been circulating around of
Oh, the
Julian
basketball.
Edelman, yeah, and Tom Brady at the
Oh my
basketball game,
gosh, dude.
and how uncomfortable Tom Brady looked when Julian Edelman said he'll be back.
He's going
He
to the Raiders, and we're all gonna hate it.
yeah, he looked at him like, "Shut up."
Right.
This is
We'll
gonna be
talk
on
about.
freezing
Well,
cold
yeah,
takes
we'll
for
get to
us.
that. But amazing game, really good back and forth. But you can't be -4 on turnovers on for Dallas and expect to win that football game. It was closer than it should have been, especially because the Renegades, the first two drives for the Renegades end up in interceptions, but the defense went and made stops and just gave up two field goals, better than touchdowns.
That's
So
true.
that's what held them in the game. But it's still the undefeated Houston Roughnecks taking the big Dubsky down in Texas. The
Yeah,
last game of the week was the DC Defenders
trash
at the
can.
Tampa Bay Vipers. This ended in a shutout for the Tampa Bay Vipers, winning this 25-0. After the first couple weeks, who would have thought that we would have seen the Vipers beat the Defenders 25-0? If someone told me this, I would have thought they were on some crack.
I would have told them that it was gonna happen.
Well, yeah, yeah. That's just you though. You're not sane.
No, I'm not, but I'm right. So I feel
Hey,
like
hey, that works. Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
the Wildcats cracked DC. They kind of made some
I
separation.
think that's why I said, did the Wildcats derail the entire season for the DC Defenders?
I think you could definitely tell that the offense and defense definitely were not clicking the same. It kind of seemed like they were all kind of against each other. You kind of see like a little bit of team arguing going on, and just Cardell Jones looked irritated again. He did not have the best game at all.
No, well, it
uh,
wasn't just him. It was the offense because that offense was not clicking, and you could see. Luckily to the all the cameras and microphones and live mics we have on the sidelines, we could really hear about some controversy. There's a lot of arguing between Cardell Jones and coaches and receivers, and they're obviously not on the same page.
Not at all. And definitely he's not happy. Receivers are getting yelled at, so they're not happy. Linemen are allowing sacks, so their coach isn't happy, which means they're not happy. And little brother's getting hit in the back there, so they're really not happy. And that defense is getting torn apart by two offenses in a row, so they're definitely not happy.
Last couple weeks have been bad for that DC defense because last week we had the Wildcats who were typically a bad offense. They put up 39. The Vipers, typically a bad offense, now they put up 25.
Mm.
But if we're talking the Vipers, they've been able to put up 27 last week and 25 this week. After scoring only a total of 12 points in the first 2 weeks, where they had 3 in the first game and 9 in the second. So obviously they're doing something right, and they're doing this on a giant run game. They are a run heavy team, and that's what's saving the Vipers. They have a combined 266 yards and 2 touchdowns this week, with their leading rusher being Davion Smith, 22 attempts, 122 yards. The And of course, Cornelius, the quarterback for the Vipers, kind of stepping up. 77% completion percentage, 211 yards, the one touchdown to one interception. But that is one of the better performances that he has had on the season. So he might be going into a bit of an uptick. The thing that's not going to uptick, though, is that defender's defense. They were outgained this week by 300 yards. The defenders gave up 470 yards, while on offense they were only able to put up 107 total yards.
Ouch.
That's
Out,
bad.
out.
That's
That's
bad.
outplayed by 300 yards. That's tough.
That's a wide margin. I think one of the biggest stories coming out of this game is there's quarterback controversy for both teams. So late in the game, the defenders had their backup quarterback Tyree Jackson in the game, and we heard on the sideline, thanks to those live mics, that Cardell Jones said that he should be benched.
Ouch.
So obviously, someone doesn't like that, and I think they're going to have a little bit of a conversation between each other. Cardell Jones being the
Mm,
captain and was being the starting quarterback. I think he should be the one to bring this up.
I think we should have a falls count anywhere match to decide the new starter for this week. No disqualification.
The disqualifications, of course. We're going to see Carlo Jones get hit over the head with a chair. Sorry, chair shots or banned in WWE, but we'll see him get hit over the back with a chair. Is that what you're telling me?
Definitely, and then with no DQ, teammates can interfere, so the teammates can interfere and help out whoever they feel like they should help out. And, we have a team brawl on our hands.
I would be all for that, to be honest. Put them in Hell in the Cell. Put them in Hell in the Cell. But there is a controversy for the Vipers. Their backup Quinn Flowers, fan favorite Quinn Flowers. The Quinn Flowers, the person who scored the first offensive touchdown in history for the Vipers, wasn't suited up this week. He wasn't even at the game due to the team said personal reasons, but he has requested his release from the team. And obviously he's sick of it. Good for him because he deserves better. He should be the starter. I don't know why he isn't. But this was something we were saying, Jalen. If Landry Jones is going to be out for an extended period of time and Quinn Flowers has to be released, Quinn and Flowers to the Renegades.
Yeah, I definitely see. I think he's going to sign. What's the rule? Are they allowed to sign with the team if they're released?
If they get cut, they can. Agent? Yeah, they're a free agent.
I think he'll be signed by, probably the end of the week. If he's released at any time this week, I think he'll be signed by what we're in week 5, so I think he'll be signed by week 6, week 7 at the latest.
Yeah, I think as soon as he's on the market, I think he's going to get picked up, because he's a big talent and he really should be.
And he really hasn't had, obviously he hasn't played the best, but at the same time, with the snaps he's been given, he's had more upside than any quarterback they've had, which is why I'm confused on why he hasn't been allowed a full game to play.
He's also way more athletic than Cornelius is, especially in the red zone. And I don't know what the Vipers are doing. But that was it for this week. 4 good games, except for the defenders. But I thought they're all, for the most part, they're all quality games. 3 of them were 1-score games. And the XFL is fun to watch. And I'm having my expectations keep on getting broken every single week I watch the XFL. I'm waiting for it to fall off. I'm waiting for something bad to happen. It just hasn't. And I don't think it's going to.